India's and Tamil Nadu's economic development and increasing international importance is remarkable. Its green transformation is both impressive and ambitious, and is key to handling the global climate challenges. Relations between Denmark and India has been deepening at an impressive pace in the last few years, and with our Green Strategic Partnership that we launched in 2020, we have joined forces in a global effort to secure a greener and more sustainable future. Commercial opportunities are expanding. Danish know-how and green solutions are drivers in India's efforts to achieve its climate goals. Our skills support the fair and just needs of the Indian people in key areas like energy and water. Today's country session will highlight these opportunities. In March last year, the Crown Prince couple visited Tamil Nadu with a large business delegation, and I'm happy to see that many of these companies are returning to Tamil Nadu's investors meet this year, many of them here at the dais. While the past years has seen a rapid expansion of ties, relations between India and Denmark go back a long way. This year, Denmark and India celebrate 75th anniversary of diplomatic ties. However, Denmark and Tamil Nadu trace their cooperation back to the 1620 with the establishment of the trading station at Tharangambadi, which was known as Trankapar at that time, about 200 kilometers where we are sitting today. Since then, Tamil Nadu has been a preferred investment destination when Danish companies are looking to expand their operations in India. Today, about 40 Danish companies have made significant investments in Tamil Nadu, and I'm confident that even more will come, and many of the ones that are here are signing MOUs to further their investments. Today, the partnership between Denmark and Tamil Nadu is very strong and steadily developing further towards a greener and brighter future. We must work together towards achieving the common goal of one Earth, one family, and one future. We must be ambitious, action-oriented, and inclusive in our efforts. I look forward to today's session. Thank you. Mika Nangri. And now I would like to bring up Bente, who is head of DI, Confederation of Danish Industry in India, to say a few words.
Thank you, Søren. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Danish delegation, I'm honored to welcome you all to this country session with the focus on green transition and sustainable development. As Søren said, I'm representing a Confederation of Danish Industry, which is the equivalent of CII, Confederation of Indian Industry. We are the largest Danish business delegation, and I'm privileged to represent a country that has fostered some of the companies that are spearheading the green transition, not just in our own country, nor in Europe, but actually globally. I'm also happy to say that Denmark and DI is firmly committed to continue and expand the strong collaboration with India, and especially states like Tamil Nadu. DI has actually been present in India since 2008 with an office in Mumbai, supporting the Danish companies that want to do business in India. And because of the prosperous development in Tamil Nadu and the strong interest from Danish businesses to focus their activities in this part of India, DI in 2022 decided to open yet another office, and this one was in Chennai. Like India and the state of Tamil Nadu, Denmark has set ambitious goals when it comes to combating the climate crisis. And Denmark wants to reach net zero by 2050. Now, as a nation, we have actually been working on reduction of CO2 emission for decades. And since the 1990s, we have been able to reduce CO2 emission by more than 40%. Water management is another area where we have a long and strong tradition for improvement. And during the last 30 years, we have managed to cut down on water consumption by also almost 40%. When it comes to reduction of energy consumption, we have been able to create significant savings on this area as well, and this has happened actually. All these reductions has happened while we have been able to grow our economy as a nation by 60%. So we've been cutting down on consumption in all these areas while still being able to grow our country's economy. These results have only been made possible because we in Denmark have a large ecosystem of ambitious companies with a clear vision to provide state-of-the-art solutions and take responsibility for driving the green transition. Now, as a small nation, we know that our contribution to the global green transition will only have a true impact if we manage to collaborate with nations and stakeholders across the globe. And this is why an event like the Tamil Nadu Global Investors Meet is crucial, because we need these kind of sessions to engage and learn and share knowledge so that we can together and jointly leverage on each other's competences and benefit all companies as well as nations. So I encourage you all to take active part in this session and take advantage of the competences that are in the room. I wish you all a joyful and successful event.
Wonderful. Thank you for the intro to Søren and Bente, and welcome to every one of you. Nice to see that this room is as packed as the inaugural session room was just a little bit before. My name is Eske Rosenberg. I'm the Consul General of Denmark, normally based out of Bangalore, but a frequent flyer to Chennai, just to say the least. I'm very happy to be here today with all of you, but also all of you guys here in the panel. We have a pretty packed program for you all. We wanted you to get the most of everything, and we will try to do our best doing just that. So we have two short and precise panel sessions in a row, and then we have a small announcement to make, after which we will send out a press release. So that's the cliffhanger of sticking around with us. The first session, Peter, is it okay if the two of us does this with the chair so we can see each other? It's supposed to be an interactive panel session, and I will do my best to moderate it. The overarching theme of this country session is how to build a clean, resilient, and prosperous energy system. And maybe we should have studied up a little bit more on the taglines of the conference. Maybe we should have added inclusive as well. We heard that mentioned many times in the inaugural session, and we could justify. Maybe we can put that in under resilient and prosperous. So we thought about that a little bit. But in the first panel, we will focus on renewable energy, green fuels, as well as financing. And this fine panel here represents companies and persons who have many years of experience in those areas. And the way we will go about it is basically that I will start out by asking them a big question, namely, what are the biggest challenges that you see to secure a clean, resilient, and prosperous and inclusive energy system of the future, and what is it that your company does to solve it? And in doing so, I will also make a very brief introduction to them. It wouldn't be enough at all to go all the way back in the CV, so I also encourage you all to stick around and have a chat with them afterwards in order to get a little bit more to know about them. But if you're okay with the rules, then I'll get started. And basically, again, here I would like to start with you, Captain Prashant Wich, representing Maersk, Head of ESG, Public Diplomacy and Regulatory Affairs in South Asia, if I'm not completely wrong, but with many years of experience in the maritime sector. What does A.P. Møller-Mærsk do? But first and foremost, which is the biggest challenge you see to secure this?
Yeah, thank you, SK. It's a privilege here to join this panel session. For us, as at A.P. Møller-Mærsk, 2023 has been a big year in our green transition journey. We have had the first vessel, the Laura Maersk, that is now in the water on green methanol. And that is one of its kind, the first container vessel dual-fueled. We have 24 more vessels on order, and that's something which we are working on. But while we talk about this, our focus has been around creating enough demand for green fuels. We believe that we've busted the chicken and egg situation with the fact of creating. Today, the industry has more than 120 vessels on order, and there is a huge demand for green methanol. While we've done that, we also believe that we have, through a recent announcement, quintupled a 4x growth in the supply side of the green methanol production through a recent announcement. So we are on both sides of the value chain and continue to focus on that. Having said that, there are challenges and quite a few of them. When we talk about that, the first and foremost challenge at this point in time that we are facing as an industry is the lack of supply of green methanol. And that is something which we need to focus and are working as part of the ecosystem stakeholder together with governments and organizations. And we will go further into that in the next stab, but I'll pause here and hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Prashant. And now we move on to a different sector, the enzymes sector. And you, Krishna Mohan, you've been working for Novozymes for more than 25 years, and you are both vice president and president of not only India, but also Africa. Yeah, many countries, a big portfolio of yours. What is the biggest challenge you see to secure a green transition, and what is it that Novozymes does to help solving it?
Thank you, SK, for the question. Novozymes is into industrial enzymes and microorganisms, and we play across multiple industries, be it in detergent, textiles, leather, and a lot of these industries are present that way in Tamil Nadu. Now, when we talk about fuels and energy transition, I think when we look at an ambition of India to a developed nation and a 35 trillion by 2047, a lot of India has to be built and has to be built right and has to be built in a sustainable manner. And herein lies the opportunity for getting the energy balance right. So moving from fossil fuel to the renewable ones in terms of green energy and green fuels is where we play. We see an opportunity. Now, we are as a company producing enzymes which help break down the first generation feedstocks. When we talk about first generation feedstocks, I would talk to rice, maize, or any carbohydrate source, which can then be, using technology like enzymes and a further downstream engineering technology, help manufacture or produce biofuels. That's the easy part of it, because rice in whatever form or maize in whatever form is pretty well structured, well understood in that sense. Now, what challenge we face within this is the governmental policy in terms of pricing mechanism, and also in terms of continuity of policies is very, very important. The second one is the availability of these raw materials. Now, there's always the challenge of food versus fuel. Now, these are food crops now, and they are also to be used in the fuel. So how do we get that balance right? How do we ensure that there is a continuity and the manufacturers have a visibility of the feedstocks availability, the cropping pattern, so that the future years things are very clear? The second part of the biofuels is the second generation, where you are producing biofuels from agricultural residue. Now, this is a very, very exciting, very nascent, but also very, very challenging, because you do not have visibility of what kind of feedstocks are available. You can produce from rice straw, you can produce from just any agricultural residues out there, and each structure is very different. So the challenge here is understanding that matrix and mapping out the availability in the different parts. I would list these two as challenges.
Thanks a lot, Mohan. And now we move on to a different sector, the renewable sector, and Better. And Bhaskar, Managing Director of Better India, with, again, 25 years of experience also from Vestas and Ørsted, two big, proud Danish companies in this space. What do you see as the biggest challenge, and what is the kind of solutions that Better brings to the table?
Yeah, thank you, SK. Before moving on to the biggest challenges, I would like to give a brief overview of wind industry in India. In India, we have a huge potential for both onshore and offshore, including the repowering of the existing turbines, which are more than 20 years old. Till 2023 November, we have installed around 44.56 gigawatt in India, only wind, and out of which 10.2 is from Tamil Nadu, which is really commendable. However, we have a big target of installing 100 gigawatt by 2030. Of course, just to give a perspective, we have been installing, the maximum we have installed is 5 gigawatt in a year. So it's not going to be easy, but definitely it is possible with the proper planning and focus. On the other hand, we have a good news that the pricing for wind has increased from 2.6 to 3.4, which makes a very good business case for the investors. So now moving on to challenges, I would say one of the biggest challenges is that now the wind turbines are becoming larger over year, which means we need larger castings for the turbines. At present, over 60% of the castings that are being produced or installed in the turbines is imported from China. The challenge is that we have high expensive production costs. For instance, the raw material like pig iron is 35% expensive when compared to China, and lower product quality levels and lack of skilled labor for large castings. Of course, we have very good skilled labor for smaller castings, but when it comes to larger castings, it's a challenge at which we face in our production process. So how do we mitigate that? In Better, we use our global technical expertise to implement cutting-edge technology and also optimize our production process. By doing this, we really improve our quality by producing high-quality components at a competitive price and also in a sustainable way. And we are really determined to be the new export hub for large castings, supporting the China Plus One concept. And in fact, we are also part of the non-Mudalvan scheme, which our CM also talked about, to enhance the skill of our employees.
Thank you very much. And all these projects that we are talking about here, be it green fuels or the maritime sector or renewable wind, requires quite substantial investments, Peter. And you represent a company that brings in quite a bit of investment to the table. You have many years of experience from the banking sector and investment sector, and now you work with Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, one of the world's biggest, I don't know if you are the biggest, but at least one of the world's biggest green financiers. What do you see as the greatest challenges or challenge, and what is it that SIP does to try to solve some of these hurdles?
So I think you're right. In terms of an investment fund that's focused on greenfield renewable energy, we are the largest in the world with some distance. And I think what we do in India's in what we refer to as middle income, high growth markets, it's by far the largest for us. And what we come with is capital. Right. We come with capital and we come with expertise from having done this all over the world and now also in India. But I think that the biggest challenge, as I see it, is really something that ties into what this morning session said again and again, which is that India needs to sort of triple its economy over the next decade and a half or something like that, and by 2047 be a developed economy. There is no example, and I don't think anybody has any idea how to do it, whereby you can deliver that kind of economic growth without having a growth in the power supply that is about the same amount. Sort of the early phase is a little bit bigger, the later phase is a little bit smaller. But that relationship is very well established. And that means that the target of additional renewable energy is actually a requirement. It's not something that's a nice to have because it's the cheapest technology, so it has to be delivered. If that is not delivered, the growth will not happen. It's that simple. And I think from a practical perspective, the biggest challenge we see in deploying our capital is basically that the government policies at a granular level are too complex, they're too sequential. Implementation across various states varies to an extent that's very unhelpful for international capital. And having an investable framework, I think, that actually allows large-scale deployment of capital is something we find quite difficult. That's our biggest challenge here.
Thanks a lot, Peter. And now I'll turn to you, Amrit. We can share the microphone if you're okay with that. You basically the Senior Managing Director of FGI Consulting, but you also represent in this connection the India Hydrogen Alliance, and hence quite a few companies in that space as well. Thank you for being with us today. Please say a few words about yourself, and then what is it that the India Hydrogen Alliance does, or what you see as the biggest challenge, and what is it that you do to try to solve that sector that you're working within?
Thanks, SK. Yes, beyond my introduction, what's more important is the group of companies I represent through the India Hydrogen Alliance. So we have Reliance, Aramco, PP, Hero Future Energies, Torrent Power, Sumitomo, and a few others. But it's really a grouping of Indian and global companies that are committed to commercialization of hydrogen in India across the value chain. And that's why this panel and discussion is excellent, because we've got representatives from across the value chain. So thank you for putting a panel like this together. The group of companies I mentioned and the India Hydrogen Alliance hopefully can be a partner in some of these conversations about scaling up green hydrogen over the next couple of years. In terms of challenges, I think this is an informed panel and an audience. I'm sure you've heard a lot about green hydrogen. The challenge really is about commercializing it at scale, not at R&D phase, which has been done over the last 15 years in different parts of the country, but really at commercializing it in a manner that can be used for different use cases, industrial, transport, of course, but more industrial, because that's going to be where a lot of the offtake will be. The transport piece on green fuels is one of the most complex challenges to solve. And I'm glad Prashant started off to say, yes, we have already taken the step to solve the offtake piece, which is actually the biggest problem. So let me stop there, and we can come back to this back again.
Super. And I hope that somebody, maybe in particular you, Jesper, who is supposed to cover the next session, will also help me a little bit on timekeeping. Since we start a little bit later, I'll try not to rush things too much. But please also give me a sign at some point if I drag it out too much. I'd like to go into a small Q&A round here, and I would, in that connection, invite one or two lucky participants in the audience to also volunteer to help us with making this a bit interactive. I prepared quite a bit, but if you have a few questions that you think are really interesting for the entire group, then please come up on this side and I'll lend you the microphone for a bit. But Peter, if we start with you, I would like to ask you what fundamental principles that guides CIP's investments decisions, one, and two, when you look into India, where do you see the biggest potential on a short and maybe a little bit longer term?
So I think fundamentally, there's a lot of sort of factors that need to be in place: the ESG, the health and safety, all of that. We are at our core a green investor, so it needs to be green energy. Other than that, we are a return-driven investor. We are an investor that is seeking for the people who entrust us with their money, including those of us who work for CIP, to generate a good return on that. And this it's fundamental. If we cannot find that in India, then we will find that elsewhere. So the returns need to be there. That typically means that we need to de-risk the projects. There's a limit to what we can see in terms of risks that we take on as a developer, both financially but also operationally, and in terms of regulatory risk of substations being delayed and so forth. And then it's really about sort of at the end of the day, what kind of power prices can we achieve? What ancillary revenues from green certificates or something like that are available to us? And that's what we base our investment decision on. So was there a second part of your question?
When you look into India, where do you see the biggest potential as of right now on a short term and maybe a little bit longer term?
So I think in the short term, we are executing on a portfolio of about 4 gigawatts, which is onshore solar and wind. And we're looking to make that bigger. So our hope in the next 3 years is to commit about $1 billion to those projects and other projects. In the medium term, we do see hydrogen and derived fuels from hydrogen as a big opportunity. We're not sure whether India is really qualifying to become an exporter of hydrogen, given that it's got good resource, but not the very best resource. And land is scarce and it's an arid country. But just for domestic supply, there'll be a big opportunity. Offshore wind, we are one of the world's foremost offshore wind developers. We're looking at it. We're also seeing something that has not moved as quickly as we would have hoped for in the last 5 years, and fundamentally we don't really understand why India needs it, and we certainly don't know who's going to pay for it. So that's probably the challenge. Nearshore may be better. And then it's really sort of all of the above in terms of solar, wind, hybrid projects around the power, large scale. It can be both C&I customers, it can be government customers. We're doing all of that, and we're doing it in all of the states where it's relevant. We'd like to do more. Anybody who's got investable projects, come speak to me. I'd like to hear about them.
That's a nice call to action. Amrit, let me point back to you. We talked a little bit in the preparation here about how Peter would answer that question. And he touched upon green hydrogen, a sector that you are quite interested in. Can you maybe share a few insights on why is it that India is investment worthy when it comes to green hydrogen? What's the status of this sector and what's the future for it?
Okay, that's a tough one. So thanks for the putting me right in there. The fact is, India is ahead on its some of its commitment on the Paris Agreement, and we have political as well as industries who are focused on decarbonization, not from a good to have pathway, but it's really existential for us here in India. If you look at a lot of the large potential developers in India, all of them will decarbonize, and hydrogen is possibly the only smooth pathway to net zero. You could talk about electrification in the mix, but a lot of people try to think of electrification competing with hydrogen, and that's completely misplaced. Electrification strategies and green hydrogen really complement each other for a net zero pathway. So, and the reason you see, I'm talking to people who already know this, but why there is so much of an excitement about green hydrogen is, yes, it is expensive. Yes, it is difficult to do right now, today, because there's infrastructure involved to be built. But it's the only way that the industrial system can be decarbonized towards net zero. It's not going to be an easy transition. And India, as Peter's already said, has the scale, has the companies that are able to take a bet like this, an infrastructure bet, not just for the next 10 years, but even 20 years. Reliance, JSW Group, they have the wherewithal and the ability to raise the cash, the capital, to be able to pursue an expensive early stage technology transition.
Thanks a lot, Amrit. And in order to produce green hydrogen, at least one value stream starts with renewable energy, Bhaskar. And what is it that you do as a company, to basically help make renewable energy and wind in particular a better option when it comes to cost as well as sustainability?
Yeah, okay. Of course, we have a lot of action plans to make it more competitive and sustainable. First one among them is localizing the raw materials in an aggressive way so that we don't import from other countries. And we also do an end-to-end value chain optimization to reduce the throughput time and the cost at the same time. And also, as mentioned earlier, we use our global technical expertise to maximize the output yield when compared to our competitors or other foundries. We have a higher yield in terms of our output. And apart from that, we have a strong sustainability strategy, which we have in place even for our suppliers. We encourage and support them to be more sustainable in the way they operate, they transport, and so on. And we ourselves have a target of using 100% renewable energy by the year 2030, and also CO2 reduction by 50% by the end of year 2030. Actually, we are a little bit proud to say that we are the first or the only foundry in India to be awarded the platinum certification from Indian Green Building Council for the entire facility. Not only for normally we used to get for admin buildings, but our entire facility is platinum certified. So we do what we can definitely in our sustainability and being competitive. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Mohan, pointing back to you or going back to you, and on the topic of how enzymes can help break down some of the barriers that relates to green fuel production. Basically, you, as far as I understand the technology, you come in at the, let's say, the supply side and not so much the demand side. So what is it that Novozymes basically offers here?
And a good question. So we bring in global expertise in terms of this technology. Now, when we look at the Indian biofuels, if you look at the first generation, let's say out of the 10 plants, 8 plants are using our technologies. Now, what we bring onto the table, we bring on expertise in terms of product, in technology, technical service, and scaling up and innovating and increasing and enhancing yields. It's a fairly new technology, so year by year, then we work and improve along with the production systems. An increase in 0.1%, 0.2% would mean substantial. Now, the second generation one is required support, just like in green hydrogen, we require support from the government and the other stakeholders because we need this technology to come through because this is an absolute essential. Outside this, we also have technologies in the East, which then helps in the fermentation process and the whole production of the fuel. So when we look at the entire value chain, we are looking at every piece and making sure that we get the best. We also go into the early part of the agriculture to ensure higher yields. So from agriculture to production to the final product, it's the entire value stream that Novozymes brings in expertise.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mohan. And Prashant, over to the demand side of things again. What kind of support do shipping companies like Maersk need from governments when setting up regulations and certifications, as well as driving investments to increase the uptake of green fuels and vessels?
Yeah, I think it's Maersk, but also the global shipping company that needs green fuels at speed, at scale, and at the right cost. And to be able to do that, we are working with governments and also organizations to make sure that we start with actually having the right regulatory environment. Be the key for us, and having discussed about the investments, the renewable energy part of it, the enzymes coming in, I think it's really the ecosystem approach and the collaboration that for us is going to be the key going forward. We've recently at the COP also together with organizations come and focused on coming out with a commitment towards asking organizations to have a end date to fossil fuel vessels, to also have a mechanism for promoting a level playing field, to looking at vessel pooling options. So these are really the key measures for us that we believe will drive the industry in the right direction towards the net zero targets that we are setting for ourselves.
Thank you very much. And we could continue for many hours, I assume, on this topic and with these knowledgeable people on the panel, but we are getting close to the end of the first of two panel sessions, sorry. But I also promised you that you could spend 10 seconds each to wrap it all up on one call to action. And Prashant, since you have the microphone, maybe you could start with yours, and then we can move to Peter, and then down this way.
Thank you. I think the 10-second ultra-short call is going to really be about collaboration across the ecosystem. That's the key. While we do that, at Maersk, we believe that a do-nothing approach on a climate crisis that's staring us in the eye is not a flat line, it's a down curve. And we need to be able to move forward together as an industry.
I think from our perspective, and specifically in an Indian context, I think the call to action is really about sort of alignment and long-term thinking when it comes to government regulation and policy. To move sort of the step from having very ambitious targets, but to have the underlying actions that actually support investors coming in to deliver on them.
In India, we have high ambitions for using renewable energy. But to start with, at least we should have a specific target for at least high energy intensive companies to have to use renewable energy at a certain level. This can be done by regulating the policies and supporting the organizations with some incentives. And by doing this, we strongly believe that there will be a significant increase in the installed capacity of the renewable projects. Yeah, you talked about also level playing field, so that is very important.
From Novozymes' side, I would say that the call to action is a very forward-looking regulatory environment, a pricing mechanism, transparency in terms of the whole buying and the pricing of these products, and how it will actually scale up or scale down on this front. I think that will help the whole ecosystem to come thrive and also evolve.
Yeah, from the IH2A's perspective, the call to action for India is clearly about large-scale project development. And I think I would echo what others have said on the panel. You cannot take an incremental approach of project development as in the past in other sectors and other transitions, saying that's something that the private sector will do, industry will do on their own, because that's incremental. It may happen in 10, 15 years. I don't think we can afford that. And I will qualify that by talking about how the government can play an enabling role and industry leaders then play an enabling role as Maersk is doing, and hopefully JSW and others will do in the respective sectors. The government can pool demand of all the PSU-owned oil and gas, all the refineries, the steel plants.
Very much, gentlemen. I appreciate your inputs very much. I hope you did the same. Can we just give them a round of applause? Thank you.